Hi guys, what's going on, and welcome back to another video on Conqueror's Blade. So it's just going to be a quick one today. I just wanted to touch on resource collection in the open world. Something I've had a few questions on, and when I thought about it, it's something that's really not covered. A lot of the intricacies really aren't covered very well in any of the tutorials and stuff, and I think it's something that often the interface leads to quite a lot of confusion because it doesn't clarify a lot of things very nicely. So I'm currently up at Magog, so I've got my camp stationed here, and this is where I base out of. This is because I'm in a house, and my house owns land, so we own this territory. Normally, most of you, a good chunk of you, particularly the newer players, you're going to be stationed at your regional city. So this is the region of Anliang, and the regional capital is Varos. You know, if you're in Astaria, Orgolia is your capital. So you'll be based out of Orgolia. So you'll be in one of the 4 regions. Now the first thing that causes a lot of confusion for people is these Imperial logging camps. So this is the only resource node inside the safe zone. There's one at each of the 4 main cities. Now these are quest only resource collection point. You'll never be able to collect resources from the Imperial logging camp unless you have that one-off quest. And it's a one-off quest, and after that it's gone. And you will not be able to use it again. If you try and use it, it will tell you this is a quest-specific one and you can't collect from here. Even though it says resource collection permitted, it is lying to you. Resource collection is not permitted. It's quest only, and so forget this exists. For all, apart from when you actually get to the quest to do it, there are no resource collections within the safe zone. You have to leave the safe zone to collect resources. Now, this kind of leads on to the second point that leads to an awful lot of confusion. So if you're not in a house at all, more than likely any resource nodes you hover over, it will say resource collection prohibited. Now this is because all resources are owned by player-owned houses. And by and large, not exclusively, but for the most part, most houses lock down resources so that they can't be collected by people other than those within their houses. They don't want you collecting from their farms because they own the farm and they want to collect from it, in effect. But there are ways around this. Even though it says collection prohibited, that means you can't gather from it. You can, however, still use requisition tokens, these things here. I've got a massive abundance of them. Actually, in fact, we might stack them so they look nice and neat. I've got 80 of them here. I've got like another 300 in my storage. You can use requisition orders to go down to to this cotton field and collect from it, even though collection is prohibited. A requisition order overrides a locked node, so that means you can collect from it. It's also worth pointing out, for example, this one here, you'll see it says unable to gather resources because there's nothing left. It's Cowhide Enemy, it is empty. Again, if you use a requisition token, you can still collect from this resource point. The only difference is you'll collect at half efficiency. So rather than, say, getting 10,000 cowhide, you'll get 5,000. But it's still well worth doing. So you can still collect from empty resource nodes. So the final thing to point out, before we actually leave the town, let's go and hop down to the Watchman. You'll always find the Watchman is obviously how you leave places. There's always a Watchman in every town, village and city. So whether you're in Varos, whether you're in the original capital, you'll look for this little signpost sign, or you can just click him here and it'll take you to him, and then you can leave the fief. For resource collection, I use serfs. Once you get them to level 7 and go down the bottom tech tree, down the labour increasing tech tree, this is the most efficient way to collect units in the open world. Collect resources even in the open world, not units. If you can collect units, you're doing well. Yeah, it's the most efficient way because it gives you 56 labour, and that is the most labour you can get. If you're not in a house, though, and are venturing off into what is effectively neutral or enemy territory, it may be well advisable to take at least one decent defensive unit with you. Maybe take a unit of cavalry or something like that, which is going to be your combat unit if it comes down to it. So once you then spawn into the open world, you can walk over to your resource node. This is the closest one here to me. You'll see, for me, it shows as permitted because I own this piece of land here. And because there are currently resources in the thing, you can see there's enough reserves, I can gather. But if it was locked, if this was enemy territory, the gathering option would be blanked out. But I can still use the requisition, to gather resources. The only thing to note is this is what the cost is to requisition, as well as 1 requisition token, you then also have to pay the fee, which in this case is 2,500 bronze. You just press requisition, use a requisition order yes, and then you'll start to gather the resources that you need. And that's kind of the best way of doing it. You can see my labour here down 56 because I've got all my serfs. And you see, there we go, now I've got a wagon full of horses. And that's really all there is to it. But I just know a lot of people were getting confused, thinking they couldn't gather any resources at all because it shows collection prohibited, or because the resource node is empty. And that is not the case. Make use of your requisition orders. You get them from doing your daily quests. You should end up with more of them than you can spend. I've got loads. So yeah, that really covers it. That's all I wanted to touch on today. And obviously don't try and collect from the Imperial logging camp unless you have the quest, because you won't be able to, even though it doesn't really make it very clear that that's the case. Any other questions on this, do put them in the comments down below. Of course, subscribe to the channel for a load more Conqueror's Blade content, and I shall see you guys all on the next video.